Welcome to Living Free in Tennessee, where we talk about building the life you choose on your terms. Today is Friday, August 16th, 2024, and this is episode 939 of Living Free in Tennessee. It might be 938, honestly. I don't know. Nope, it's 939. I got it right. That's good. Anyway, today's a Homestead Happening show, so we're going to talk to you all about what's going on in the Homestead, and we've sort of got 2 weeks to cover because I was out last week. We thought we were going to be able to do this because I was feeling better one day and then I was not better. So whatever the flu is that's going around, I highly recommend don't get it. That's what I'm standing by that.
Yeah.
So today we're going to talk about forage that we're finding on the homestead. And we're going to talk about ducks getting sick and getting better. We're going to talk about what's up with the tomato wall, some updates on the infrastructure projects we're working on here, and rabbit breeding season is upon us.
I was actually thinking about that.
Yeah, you were. We didn't talk about it, though, because we don't use our words at this homestead. Anyway, do we use our words here?
Sometimes.
Sometimes. Not usually, though. It's usually just sign language, right? Yeah. What I've learned is that rednecks communicate by sign language. Like Nighthawk comes over and he talks. They don't talk. They just sort of gesture. And then they like turn on heavy equipment and things get done. And I'm like, okay, the boys don't use words around here. So that's how it is. Anyway, everybody in the live stream, if you could do me a favor, hit the like and share button. And then also, if you have questions, put them in the comments, all caps, so I can see the first word at least. With that, before we go into the main topic of today's show, I do want to talk about our featured event of today's show. And I have talked about this event already. It is a virtual event, and it is basically a combination of wild foraging and wild edible plants put on by Sherry Stickler, who's an herbalist out of Cookeville, Tennessee, who I actually am looking forward to getting to know her better. And she's come to me at a time in my life where I've been traveling to California a lot. So I haven't gotten to sit down with her and go over some of this stuff. But next Thursday at 12:30 p.m. to 1:30 p.m. Central Time, Foraging for Health, Better Than Walmart. It's a member webinar. So if you're a member, it's free. If not, it's $45. And if you go to livingfreeintennessee.com, I just showed you on the screen for those of you in the video. On the right-hand side, you'll see a link to this, and then you can just fill out the form, which is it's right here. It's View Organizer website. I will make that better by actually giving you the link here in the body. But you fill out the form, sign up for the webinar, and we'll get you set up. Okay, I also want to thank our two sponsors of the show today. The first one is John Pugliano of the Wealth Studying Podcast. John Pugliano is a really great guy, and he is somebody who believes in showing people your mileage before you actually promise them anything. He's a money manager, but what he does that's helpful for everybody is he does a podcast called the Wealth Studying Podcast. And he talks about just different ways he's making decisions. He talks about money management. He talks about how geopolitical things are impacting how he's making decisions. And he's somebody who is a self-made millionaire. So, you think about taking advice from people and what they've shown you they can do. Like yesterday, I got a pretty snarky email from somebody who was irritated with me about pricing on something that was not expensive. And I was like, well, we have, I answered it. But at the same time, I looked at what they did for a living, and they were giving advice on how to be a successful business. And I'm like, but why? Then I'm confused. Because that email I got was not good communication. It was not kind communication. And it was not something somebody who's successful would say. So then why are you giving advice on successfulness? But I let it go. And I just realized, like, when we're out and about looking at who's giving advice, a lot of people are giving advice because they want to be a coach or they want a coaching business. But then when you look at what they've actually done in their lives, you realize, oh, They're not good at that. So like you wouldn't take relationship advice from your uncle who's been divorced 3 times, would you?
Probably not.
Probably not. Same thing with this. So check it out. Well Studying Podcast. I promise you'll learn a lot. It's a great podcast. I love listening to the episodes and they're short. Our second sponsor of today's show is Discount Mylar Bags. So Toby from Discount Mylar Bags reached out to me years ago when I was first starting Holler Roast Coffee. And he was like, hey, I can help you get your bags for cheaper. How much are you spending on your bags? Send me a sample. And he did. And we are through that first container of bags. So the second container, it is time. But it was really helpful to my business. And he does the same thing with all sorts of food storage things. He sources things in bulk, passes on the savings to you. He's a local Tennessean who's running his business. Check out all of their stuff at discountmylarbags.com. And if you look at the website on the right-hand side, he's got a couple articles he's written that are pretty cool about how to store stuff. So check that out, discountmylarbags.com. If you are a member, there is a discount code you can use in the member portal. And also, if you're in there, you should totally sign up for the herbalism webinar. Okay, with that, we're going to go into our first topic of today's show. So we've changed the format of it, where we used to go through heading by heading by heading, and then it was sort of like, it became rote. It became sort of like a train going chugga, 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 and I was getting bored with my own episodes. So now I just talk to him about what do you want to talk about? Well, we've got 2 weeks worth of stuff. So let's start with, I was sick AF last week, right? Would that be a good description?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, was it clear I was sick when I was sick?
Very.
Yeah, I was ridiculous. And then right as I'm just starting to feel a little bit better, like I was not in my bed, I was in my chair in the living room, which is like progress for me, right?
Yeah.
He comes up the hill and he actually comes on the CB radio and he's like, we've got a duck down and another one I can't get. And you sounded really upset. Can you get closer to the mic?
I was actually pissed because I had a duck that I couldn't get out of the pond.
Ah, okay. And so and I was like, does that mean he wants me to come help him? Because I'm not feeling like I can move, but I can make myself move if I have to make myself move. Because that's how things go on the homestead, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, what's up? And he's like, they're floppy. And I was like, okay, do you want my help? And he goes, no, but curse, 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 duck, pond, curse, curse. Nighthawk was here for that too, I think.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, they need to be quarantined because the first thing you do when an animal is sick is quarantine them. So tell them how you figured out how to quarantine them.
We just used dog crates.
Okay, so what'd you do? You went and found dog crates.
Yeah, and we just moved them up here.
Yeah. We just moved them up here and put food and water in them and set them up in a way that would work, right?
Yeah. I mean, functional.
So it started with 1 duck, and then the next day, same thing, more floppy ducks. So by the end of it, we ended up with four ducks that were floppy. And I was like, what could be causing this? Because, you know, when you take care of poultry, you get to know all the basic illnesses. And this was, at first I thought we had an egg-bound girl, but then a boy got it too. So he was clearly not egg-bound.
Yep.
And she hadn't died. And I hadn't found an egg to unbind. So I started thinking about, like, there was no upper respiratory signs. There was no sign of worms. There was just floppy ducks, like clearly structurally not bad. And I thought back to like when I first started raising ducks. I got little teeny ducks from Tractor Supply that were mostly male because you know somebody had cherry picked the females. And they too had a similar thing happen in their first week here. And I started reading up. And the thing is, duck nutrition is different than chicken nutrition. Did you know that?
Not really.
Yeah. So, duck nutrition, what often happens is they get low on magnesium. So then what would we do?
I mean, they got free access to more food than they could eat. And they also got nothing but vitamins in the water, so they only had one source of water to drink from.
So we always keep supplemental vitamins on hand, and that's what we did is we gave him supplemental vitamins. He started giving the other ducks vitamins. What I knew is we had just gotten a new shipment of feed, right? And I was like, well, maybe something's wrong with the feed. So we've also had low egg production
For a
while. And I just figured they were molting because it is about the time of year when they molt. And within about 2 days, the ducks were less floppy, and we had them like some of them were just in the stock tank because they couldn't fly because they were so bad off.
Yeah, they couldn't. Most of them, like even the Muscovy, which Muscovies are difficult to catch, she could not walk well enough to get away from me.
Yeah. So
she couldn't fly at all.
No, she couldn't fly. So I was like, well, let's get them out of those dog crates because they're just sitting there looking pathetic, and it's hot when the sun's on them, even if we shade them. And he made them like a little oasis where little sheep grew up out of the same supplies that little sheep, because we made like a makeshift stall for her. And he put a nice cement tray full of vitamin water for them. And like we put them in there and they jumped in and they swam and they were super happy. And they hung out there for a day. And then by that night, there were only 3 ducks in there.
Yeah, the Muscovy had gotten apparently well enough that she flew the coop, literally.
Yeah, she flew the coop. And then we let him stay overnight one more time. He asked me to look at him and let him go, and they were fine. And we've supplemented the vitamins for the whole flock at this point.
Yeah.
And we're getting more eggs too. So my theory is the feed does not have enough vitamins in it.
Yeah, and the last couple of, they went up an egg every day for like a week, and then the last couple of days I've been busy enough I did not top the vitamin water back up. So today we were back down to 4 eggs, but I also had all of their vitamin water topped back up this morning. So we'll see if the egg production.
So it's like literally we have to supplement vitamins all the time now.
It looks like.
And this is like a high quality organic feed with no soy. Like,
yeah,
I don't know what to do about the feed situation because like finding that kind of feed in Tennessee is really hard.
At this point,
like we could source it from Texas and ship it up.
Yeah, I mean, unless we're doing that, I think we're just going to end up supplementing with vitamins.
Yeah. But we should give that feedback to, we need to give that feedback to the feed company.
I don't think it's this batch. I think it's just the feed in general.
That's what I'm saying. We need to give that. It's like they've changed something.
So I don't know.
Yeah. So that's the fun part of homesteading, right? Is figuring out what in the world is happening in that regard. I was so sick that I've had a hard time getting back on a full-time schedule. Full-time for me is more than 8 hours. So what I've discovered is I get really tired by the end of the day. And earlier this week, I decided what would help me was bottle lamb therapy. So I went over to the pasture and hung out with little sheep, and she's a friendly little critter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So been doing bottle lamb therapy every couple of days. The only problem is once I go there, I have exposed my clothes to chiggers. So I'm doing a lot more laundry because you can't wear clothes after they've been exposed to chiggers.
Yeah.
How are the sheep doing otherwise?
They're fine.
We moved them to one of our best pastures, and they're looking way better, just condition wise, weight wise.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I have a harder time seeing that stuff because I see them every day. So you don't necessarily notice the gradual changes, but I could see it. I think I was looking at Amy the other day and was like, yeah, she definitely looks a lot more built out right now than
so that's our goal for the rest of the fall. We want them that fat.
And I mean, it's right now they're on the second of the 3 really good paddocks. The next one is okay, or not. The one after the next one is okay. And I think the one after that's going to be fairly decent for them. But I'm trying to get a couple of more paddocks to the same shape that those are in. But it just
What's it take to do that?
keeping the weeds knocked down so that the grass can take over.
Okay. Yeah, he's been mowing a lot this summer.
Yeah, and that's, I mean,
The whole purpose of cheap is you don't have to mow, but here we are.
Well, it's the pattern that I've noticed here, and this is in the pasture, this is over here when we got rid of the pig, or when we moved the pigs over to the pond. Noticed probably the first time I noticed it is you have bare ground. The first thing that comes up is a bunch of weeds. You wait until they kind of get established, mow everything to the ground, weeds and grass come back up. You let the weeds get a foot or two tall. If you knock them down again, then the grass starts to take over. And then as long as you keep the weeds mowed down, then the grass will start to dominate, which is, the paddocks in the pasture have been that, but a couple at a time. So it's been a gradual thing. And it's very easy to go over there. You can stand in one spot and I can point to different paddocks and you can physically see the difference.
Yeah, that's good. Hey, Tactical, can you do me a favor? Take your mug in your hand. Okay, so somebody in the comments, Erica says, I love the mug. Without spilling that on my computer, show them the mug. So this is from Cheap Mug Day at the Farmer's Market. One of my favorite things. The last time I was at the Farmer's Market was the day I got sick. I was sick later that day. And it was Cheap Mug Day. And Cheap Mug Day is a fundraiser where local potters and artists sell stuff that isn't going to sell, or maybe it has a little flaw in it. Can you look for the flaw in that? There's probably a flaw in that. It may simply be that it's a little lopsided. Yeah. Oh, see where that glaze, that little spot there?
Oh,
so, yeah. My MO is anything that's a coffee mug that works well here, I buy for two reasons. One, when we do mug shots for Holler Roast, I have a really fun, like, eclectic collection of different mugs I can use. And two, rednecks break coffee mugs.
That happens.
It happens. So he went through all of his favorite mugs, I think, this year, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I came back and he's like, he started to use my Zoldak, like, espresso size mugs because that's the size he wants.
I mean, they work.
And the problem is he keeps pulling away from the mic for some reason. You could move the whole chair over and then you'd just be naturally closer to it. I move the mic ever closer and ever closer. But anyway, so that's where that mug came from. And it's one of my favorite times. So this time I just gave him one mug. We'll see how long it lasts. And I have like a whole collection in the background of other mugs.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see how many mugs he goes through this year. We've got a new roof on the prepper pantry, which has been a long-term plan. And I sort of wanted to build a storage room above it, but I decided that my budget didn't want me to do that. So now I'm fully committed to never building that storage unit. Yeah, I think I'm committed. Because then we'd have to rip that roof off.
Not necessarily, but...
Yeah.
I just want to get the rest of the room done.
Yeah, so basically there's been three things on the list here. And that was one of the three. And our friend Ken Esch, who sometimes he's like, hey, do you want me to come next week? And he knew there were some pending projects. He said that. And I was like, well, what I really need done is my mudroom, like built-ins all done and that all set up so that we can do the final trim out, all of the wiring and have that done. But we don't need Ken for that yet. It needs to be demolished. It needs to be wired. It needs to be drywalled. And that's a lot of steps before you can do the built-ins. Painted.
Yeah, it's more along the lines of we're not ready for Ken to do that.
Yeah. So I was like, well, I do need to so from the time I moved into this home 17 years ago, the roof over the prepper pantry has been problematic. When I moved in, there was not a roof over it, really. There was that roof that you pulled out that was metal and then concrete and then metal that was all rusty. sitting on top of metal pipes as their framing. And then on top of that was tar paper. And I think originally on top of that was tile roof. And the tile roof had been pulled off the roof and then a new metal roof put on, and nobody ever meddled over that. I don't know why. But a friend of mine made a 2x4 frame over the top of that, tapped it in. That was David Booty, by the way, and put a metal roof over it because he was like, well, I can't just put metal on this because it's not going to work, but this is what we can do. So at least it doesn't leak in there every time it rains. And that mostly worked, except for then we took a chimney out. And so that was a place where water was coming in, where the chimney used to be. And some other things have changed since then. So when Ken said he was available, I was like, well, it's third on my priority list, but it is a thing that you can do in 2 days. And so Nighthawk and Tactical this weekend did as much demolition as they could without that last layer of roofing that David Booty put on coming off, because it was going to rain. And we didn't know when it was going to rain, but we knew if the roof was open and it rained, all the freezers inside the prepper pantry were going to get rained on, and we didn't want that.
Yeah.
So we lucked out with the weather, and the last 2 days it hasn't rained, and the rest of that got demolished, and it is dried in now. And so there's more work to be done. We also need to run wiring in there for lighting and wiring for where things are going to go in there. So it's kind of like the mudroom in the way that it needs to have like insulation, drywall. We have to decide where things are going to go, make sure we have plugs where plugs need to be. But that's actually that's 17 years later. I have an actual roof installed the way it should be installed on that.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, I'm guessing that cost me $2,500 total to do when we're done with it all.
Okay.
We'll find out. It might be $3,000. But like the idea of spending that much money when I first got this place was inconceivable to me.
Yeah.
So, which is why we did that other fix, like it was like, well, at least it's not leaking now. So I'm excited to get it done, and it's closing off a gap between that roof and a covered area where my outdoor kitchen is.
Yeah, that's one of the parts I'm looking for.
So that's going to be big, because we're actually closing in the back of that bay totally into more of a sunroom thing or a screen room it may be a walk-in freezer fridge, depending on what temperature we set it at back there. And also the outdoor kitchen so it'll be like open, but not open, I guess is the best way to say that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's all coming together. And that's like the last part of the house that really needs big structural stuff that I am aware of. Now, you've heard me say that's the last part of the house that needs structural stuff. And then I find more stuff about the house that needs structural stuff. So yeah, At some point this needs a roof.
Okay. But
we need 2 other roofs before this roof is needed to be roofed.
Probably.
Yeah. So that's the fun of being on a homestead. Like the more buildings you have, the more roofs you have to maintain. So that's super fun. Anyway, Erica says regarding the pasture, maybe you need clover. We need the smaller plants to thrive better. I think we need some compost tea sprayed out there.
Yeah, there's been a lot of clover seed distributed over there.
And Timothy grass.
The Timothy grass has actually started coming up. The clover does not like to grow over there. Plantain does not like to grow, or I don't think plantain likes to grow over there because I really haven't seen any. Yeah,
so he got stung by a bee. That's why he knows that. He couldn't find any. He came back here all pissed off because in the entire holler pasture down there was not a single plantain leaf he could use for his bee sting, and he had to drive all the way back here to get one.
Yeah, and I was all the way at the top.
Maybe we should give you a bee sting kit. Like a little thing of salve.
It's not like normally a huge concern over there, but apparently there was a yellow jacket nest, like I guess in the ground somewhere up there, and they got pissed off the lawnmower.
So those of you who've listened to the podcast for a while, you know I'm allergic to honeybees. And that's why the honeybees moved off my property. Although I don't mind if they're nearby. I just didn't want my angry bees on my property because I didn't need to go to the hospital again. And 2 days ago, I walked into to my package drop off area to get my crate where the packages go for holler roast coffee. And then as I'm walking out the door, I feel something in my back that feels suspiciously like I just got stung. And it was somewhere where I absolutely could not reach. Like it was, like, yeah,
Back up
like
in there.
back up in there. And I'm like, oh crap, what do I do? Because I'm allergic to bee stings. And I don't know what kind of bee it is because I can't see. I don't have eyes on my back, as it turns out. And and he wasn't there, but Ken was on the roof and Mike was in the bathroom doing work, both of them. And so I walk up the hill and I'm like, hey guys, like, I need you to come look at this. And I was like, okay, so like, look at my back. Is there still a bee attached to me? And they were like, no. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to lift up my shirt. I have a modest bra on at this point, and it was my back, guys. But at some point, it's like I needed them to see. I was like, I'm pulling it up. Is there a stinger in there? Because if it's a honeybee, the stinger will get left behind, or so it would have been on my shirt or whatever. And they were like, no, but it walloped you good. Like I was bleeding a little bit where I got stung. And so then he was in town. I'm like, hey, dude, because I go to get my Benadryl. So like the whole purpose of me having Benadryl here is literally life-saving because I'm allergic to bees. And the first thing you do is take Benadryl. And yes, I have an EpiPen. And yes, I know where it is. And yes, it's still good. So I told him, I'm like, I'm allergic to bees. I'm getting the EpiPen out in case you need to use it on me or I need to use it. But like right now, I feel okay. And the thing is, I don't want to just randomly use an EpiPen for no reason.
Yeah.
Because, yeah. So no Benadryl to be found. Like somebody walked off with my Benadryl bottle and I didn't know it. And so I queue up to him. I'm like, I need Benadryl. And he queues up to the neighbors. He's like, I can't find it at the store. Do you have Benadryl? And they queue up to me, not realizing I'm allergic to bees. And they're like, do you need Benadryl? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, we have all this other allergy stuff. I'm like, I specifically need Benadryl. And then Benadryl didn't show up till he got home for some reason. So then I talked to him later. They're like, we forgot you were allergic. And so we're like, why is this such a big deal? I was like, because I was lightheaded and I needed something to not die. Anyway, I mean, not that I would have necessarily died. I don't know what happens if I don't treat it. But he came home with Benadryl and I was like sitting down because I was like, what happens is I get lightheaded and then like muscle weakness. My O2 drops a little bit. And yeah, that's what happened. And so I was sitting down and I was like, oh, I'm going to take one of those. And within, 5 minutes?
Yeah.
5 minutes of taking a Benadryl, it was done. So 2 things about that. I was stung by, we're 99% sure it was a wasp, which is not a honeybee, which means I shouldn't necessarily be allergic to that because they are different.
Yeah, it was one of the red paper wasps.
Yeah. And then, so I was like, I don't know how I'm going to react, but it was high enough up on my body that I was like, if it was my leg, I would have been less worried because it takes a while for stuff to travel. But I also know that the Benadryl seems to work. Like the one where I was stung on my finger really bad was here. And that one was just out of control. And that was the one that put me to the doctor's office. But yeah. But I think I'm actually going to start carrying my EpiPen to the range when I go to training classes.
Probably a good idea.
Yeah. And then, of course, always have Benadryl on hand. So, like, this just reiterates, like, 3 times in the last 2 weeks, the medical preps have worked, but they've been, like, not exactly how we want them. And apparently I need to make sure that after the spring workshop, I still have Benadryl. Because probably what happened is somebody needed Benadryl at the spring workshop and somebody took that out. And who knows where it is at this point.
Yeah.
So, and then 2 is 1, 1 is none. I should probably have a second thing of Benadryl. Well, I do have it in 2 places now.
That's actually, I was about to say, I'm going to take some of what you have and put like 2 or 3 pills in the cabin. That way I have some and I know where it is. Not that I will ever use it, but in the event that I need it for somebody else like you, I will know exactly where I can find it. I wonder what the herbal remedy is too. Like if I'm out of Benadryl and it happens, is there something here that I can take? Because just rubbing plantain on it or comfrey on it didn't do it. Or should I just eat comfrey? I don't know. No idea.
See, that's why talking to an herbalist seems like a really good idea to me. Rose hips are ready to harvest. So that's kind of cool. And this is the first year where I'm going to get that done. I've already harvested some little rose hips, and they're very high in vitamin C. So that's like the benefit of the rose hip. It's like an immune system boost from the vitamin C. And I have big ones for my Rosa rugosa, and then there's like little teeny ones on all the wild rose plants. And I've harvested little teeny ones and started drying them. Do you care?
I'll care when I get to drink the tea this winter. Not that I'm concerned about my vitamin C intake, but it tastes good.
Yeah. So Jeff Benefield says, keep plantain in the truck or four-wheeler. Absolutely. Or plantain salve. So in my competition with Dawn Gorham from Gorham Homesteads about who can can our stuff the fastest, that I'm sure she's winning, but I keep poking her online about it anyway. I have 59 and a half quarts of green beans as of the end of this week. And then I had 63, but 4 of those lids didn't seal. There is going to be a video about crappy lids.
Yep.
That everybody, I'm going to show you guys what's up with the lids. I had 25% failure on my first batch of green beans. And this one was more like it was a 10% failure or so on the second batch of green beans. And the difference was I got better lids. Like I threw away my bulk lids from Fillmore because they're not sealing right. And then I got ball lids from Walmart because that's what was available. And then I ordered some lids that was recommended to me by Dawn that she's trying out this year that she really likes. And so we're just going to go side by side by what they looked like. But what I noticed is the Fillmore lids, the rubber is very thin. And that's different than the Fillmore lids I got before 2020. So I wonder if they've retooled at their factory or if they were training new people or what happened. But we're talking, I threw away 4 sleeves of lids, like, which is a lot of lids. That's like probably 1,000 lids that I got rid of because it's not worth it to have jars not seal. The ball lids, what I noticed about the quality there is like the rubber's thicker than the Fillmore. But there was a lot of like rubber on the outside, and I got several lids that had been dented and had like little rust spots starting on them. So that's also a quality issue, right? Like I don't know if they were just beat up at the factory or what, but they were like not in the best of shape either, but they had thicker rubber. And so they're sealing a little bit better. And then I have this other brand. I can't remember the name. It's like 4 jars or something. We're going to try the 4 jar lids on my next round. Now, as far as tomatoes, my goal is to have 24 jars of tomato sauce by the end, which is less than Dawn uses. So she's like, she doesn't have any green beans or very many green beans, but she's got like all of the tomato sauce going. So we just keep poking each other back and forth on the internet because it's fun. But I've got 10 jars of my 24 for that. So I don't know if I'll make it on the tomato sauce side. And then I haven't made any salsa at all this year. I have tried 3 times to make salsa. The last time I tried to make salsa, and what that requires is peppers. So our peppers, we're not getting enough peppers for me to make salsa. So I have to source them from another farm. So I will buy the peppers and I will come home fully intending to do salsa. And then I got sick as a dog and did not make salsa. So stuff like that keeps happening. And it may mean that I don't make salsa this year and I just have tomato sauce. And then you can make salsa from your tomato sauce. So that's also possible. But tomatoes have slowed down in the last week.
Yeah.
You just know that from the tomato wall?
Yeah, and it's probably like I should probably actually stick the meter in the sump and see what the nutrient level is, because I did not do a very good job of
checking that this week.
Like I haven't looked at, like I've added nutrient, but I haven't actually checked the nutrient level.
What I found about the nutrient in that system is every time I check it, it's about where I think it's going to be. Which means I've gotten really good at knowing exactly how much to add when I top it off.
Well, same, but like I have not added when I should have added, so I'm sure it's nutrient deficient right now.
Well, we'll check that out right after the show. I have had the most success with that wall this year out of any year.
Yeah.
and we have shade cloth up, but I'm thinking, my suspicion is in the next week or two, I need to slide the shade cloth back.
Possibly.
Yeah. And I think that's true of my jalapeno peppers too, which are under shade cloth in the aquaponics system. I've got peppers on them. But this time of year, they start accelerating. And I think it's because there's 50% shade cloth over them that they're a little slower. However, that's also part of why these plants did okay when we went through that really hot spell in July, when it was just like scorching and awful for the plants. He came up with a new sick tea formula. So when I was sick, I was like, I just want mullein and mint tea, even though I had no upper respiratory symptoms at all. And so he came in and handed me this tea, and I was like, is this COVID? Is my taste affected? Like, what's going on? I'm like, this tastes really good. What's in here? And he's like, oregano, Mexican tarragon, sage, chocolate mint, and mullein. And I was like, oh, it's the tarragon, I bet. So now I have this like whole new plant I've discovered for tea that I always use tarragon in cooking.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really good in tea. Did you already know that?
Mm-hmm.
How'd you learn that?
Wait, learn what?
That tarragon is good in tea.
I don't know.
You don't know? When did you try it for the first time?
Like, you tried it before I did. I just put that plant in like 2 weeks ago.
Okay, so he didn't know. He just was like, I'm going to pick this plant.
No, I knew it would go. I knew it would work in tea, and I know that it's an herbal remedy. I don't remember what for. I specifically looked it up before I put it in there to make sure that it was fitting for the blend that I was making. But it was like, I have not actually tried it yet. Well, I have now, but when I gave you that, I had not actually tasted it yet.
Yeah, it's really good. And now I'm like, we only have one plant. It's so sad. We should dry some of that for winter. It has been a really good foraging year, but something weird happened this week. Yesterday, he came back from wherever a dump run or something.
Yeah.
And he comes up and he just puts 2 handfuls of pawpaws on the table in front of me. And it is August 16th. Pawpaws are ripe the first week of September in Tennessee.
Yeah, these are definitely early. There are a ton of pawpaws on that tree, and like I shook the tree and like 2 fell out.
Yeah, so the pawpaws are ripe early this year by about 2 weeks. And today we'll probably go shake some more trees. I had a pawpaw last night. It was delicious. I tried to give one to a friend, but she forgot to take it home. And pawpaws are not something I store. So that's been a really neat thing. And I had noticed that this year, more than other years, there are a lot of pawpaws on the trees, like tons and tons of them. So it's a very heavy pawpaw year. My guess is that the persimmons are also going to be abundant, but those are way at the top of the ridge. So I haven't gone up to check that out. Donna says, I had to source tomatoes and peppers for yesterday's salsa. Tomatoes are very slow to ripen. As mentioned before, I had no peppers made. So yeah, so my tomatoes came on all at once for a while, and then now they're slower again, which is actually more manageable for me. And then with the whole prepper pantry roofing thing, like my freezers are in various states of, we just took a roof out. So we still haven't done the freezer audit, which I hope to get into this weekend, but we'll see how this weekend goes because I'm still sick, guys. It's like ridiculous how long this one's staying on. But we've also found lots of goldenrod this year. There's a ton of passion flower, which we need to get today, like for the leaves. And I want blackberry root because I've learned that can help me with my current situation.
Yeah.
So, and I've never harvested blackberry root before. I've always just harvested the leaves. But we'll see how the root does. So
I enjoy it because I get to yank blackberries out by the root.
Yeah,
so.
And we need to harvest sage and some other stuff that are big, and it's like perfect time to harvest it. More mint needs to be harvested. So there's just a lot of things like that coming off the land. And so it's actually pretty good timing for the wild herbal and wild edible webinar that we have next week with Sherry Stickler, because like right now is really good foraging time.
Yeah.
I'm guessing the ginseng's probably coming on right now too. This is
Probably.
right about when people start saying, I have ginseng for sale, right? The Eversoles had a GSD weekend this weekend and or last weekend, and a whole bunch of people came out and helped them cut trees. So that was pretty awesome, like clearing trees for what they're doing. And they're getting to the point where they almost have like Camp Eversole ready to go on their new land, which is pretty awesome. It's fun to hear. I haven't been out there to see it yet. I want to go out. I have not been well enough to do things like that. But hopefully I'll get out before Self-Reliance Festival. If not, I'm going right after Self-Reliance Festival to like check out the land and see what it's like there. Because I think it's a pretty cool, area. And I can imagine how exciting it is to build your like raw land into the homestead you want.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they're having a lot of fun with it, and I think it's fun talking to them about it because they're just so excited.
Yeah.
So that's happening. Homestead meals this week have not been all that creative.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
Yeah. I haven't been. Food and I are not getting along, and so we've had a lot of steak this week because steak is easy to cook and relatively innocuous to eat. So yeah, we still need to separate the rams.
That's getting ready to happen if I have to do it by myself.
Yeah. Do we need more collars? Are you just gonna like lasso them and?
I will figure it out when the actual time.
Okay,
comes.
can we get you a hobby horse and then you lasso them and you look like you're on a horse, but you're on a hobby horse?
No.
No? You won't do that?
No.
Oh. They'd really enjoy that.
Then they can come here and help.
Yeah, we need to get them over here. And it's rabbit breeding season again. So I don't breed them in the summer heat because then they give birth in the summer heat and there are more problems. So I was just like, I was going to surprise him with that one today, but he's like, oh yeah, I was thinking that too. So it's time for the girls to go see the boys. I would like to look at the condition of the boys before the girls go see them and choose which ones. And that one jerk boy might have to go, the unfriendly one.
Okay.
But we kind of need to keep him in case the other two are not fertile anymore.
Okay.
Yeah. But they're liking their new cage, I think.
No, I'm sure they are, as opposed to where they were.
Yeah. Other than that, financially speaking, we're getting more eggs, which means we can start selling eggs again, which will bring a little bit of money in, but egg money is not big money.
No.
But not buying eggs from anybody else is helpful. And I actually traded eggs for tomatoes. I need to deliver those now that we have eggs again. And knowing why we weren't getting eggs is pretty important too, because that actually means we have to do a lot more deep diving into the feed that we use for our birds, which may in fact require a road trip to Texas.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I can just contact the company too.
Yeah, well, it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. But it's actually really disappointing that feed is not working. To me, like they're supposed to be like this great brand of feed, and then it's like, but we have to give vitamins to our ducks for them to have eggs.
Yeah.
And then we had 4, like if we hadn't been paying attention, those 4 would have just been dead. So it's why finding more and more ways to get feed on your own homestead starts to be a really motivational thing.
Yeah. And
because that's happening with dog food, that's happening with cat food.
And it's going to continue to happen. And that's also why, like, I'm not even arguing the whole putting in a poll thing right now, because that means that I get to put in supplemental stuff around the poll, which I'm not sure exactly what it's going to look like yet, but there is going to be a duck pond with water plants somehow going in adjacent to all of that.
Not a duck pond for the ducks to go in, though.
They will be able to get in. It'll be like the size of 2 concrete mixing trays.
Because if there's any food in there at all, they will just eat it all. as illustrated by our watercress patch this year.
Yeah, it's gonna be a multi thing.
The good thing about the watercress patch is the watercress is starting to come back, and I think the ducks might have forgotten about it.
Maybe.
Yeah, because you've made their pond so nice. They just hang out in the pond a lot. Have you seen them in the creek much?
Not as much. They seem to really be liking the pond right now.
Yeah, I wonder why.
I don't know. I mean, it's definitely. I'm guessing I brought the water level up 6 inches at least. So I don't know if it's just that it's deeper. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure.
The cat that's on today's show is LT, based on what I just heard.
I don't see LT.
He's over there squeaking.
LT.
Yeah. It's like this cat never got out of his kitten thing. Okay, so tell me this. Oh, it is Tigger. He just impersonated LT. Or LT's over there yelling at Tigger. So when the ducks don't go to bed because they're in the pond because they love the pond, what happens now?
Oh, that was fun.
So I looked down. Let me just I'm going to set the scene for you. I'm taking my morning walk and I look over and there's a kayak parked in the pond, at the side of the pond. And I was like, I wonder if I could kayak in the pond and if it would be worth it because it's not a very large pond. So then the ducks didn't go to bed. And what did you do?
So when she says the ducks didn't go to bed, the Muscovies and the old flock went to bed. Everybody else was in the pond and they were like, we're not leaving.
It's too nice here.
Yeah. And so I jumped in the kayak, went down to one end of the pond, circled around and started coming back. And it was like duck horror, with the whole flock swimming as fast as they possibly could in the direction of the coop. And then there was like clown cars scrambling, trying to get out of the pond. And it was glorious.
So they didn't like the really big orange duck that chased them?
No, they did not.
Yeah. So, yeah, that worked really well. And there had been a developing situation where ducks were not wanting to go to bed and he was climbing into the pond to get them to go to bed and really pissed off every time. And now he's just happy because he gets to chase them and be a big duck. Have you had to do that since then?
No, that was the last time that I had to actually run anybody out of the pond. But it was like the other day when we had the first sick one. Like it was literally, I would walk around to one side of the pond and the duck would swim across to the other side of the pond.
Yeah.
So that I couldn't get to her.
Yeah.
And I wasn't willing to go in the water to get to her. And so now it's like, okay, you want to play games? Rednecks will play games. And we will win.
Well, he got to have fun doing it, which is way better than like pissed off at duckedness.
Well, I mean, it really beats the time that it was like December and we were standing waist deep in the pond trying to run ducks out of there.
Yeah, I was part of that. I was also waist deep. It's like you have these rubber boots, right? And they go up to your knees and you go in the pond and like I remember it's like boop, boop, boop. Oh, these are going to go underwater. And then it's like, well, screw it. I guess that'll happen.
Once you're waist deep, then the rubber boots actually become counterproductive.
Yeah, it is true. They get stuck in the mud and they fill with water.
Mm-hmm.
The only good thing about being waist deep in that pond in December is the water coming out of the ground is 55 degrees.
True.
Which is better than colder than that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's almost like warmer in the pond than out of the pond at that point.
Yeah.
That's what I remember. But yeah, we got him in that time. And then everybody had to change clothes. Mm-hmm. Except for Mama Sauce, who watched us and laughed at us the whole time.
Yeah.
And she's like, but are you cold? Because she's a mom. Anyway, guys, that's the update from the holler this week. If you like the show and want to support the work we're doing here, definitely check out that member webinar at livingfreeintennessee.com. It's on the right-hand side. You can see the Better Than Walmart wild foraging webinar that's next week on Thursday at 12:30 p.m. Central. Also, get your coffee at hollerroast.com. It's delicious and roasted to order. With that, guys, go out, make it a great week.